this passion for helping people to foster better connections, better relationships, the work that you used to do with Working Voices that you've now sort of taken out of the workplace into the real world so that we can all have a better existence. Like, where did that come from?
I like people a lot. I think people are extraordinary. And years and years ago in my other life, I trained as a classical actor. So I kind of learned the nuts and bolts of how to communicate, all sort of the basic things you need in order to get your point across. And then, acting turned out to be challenging, getting a job and all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of getting at the end of my rope really with being an actor. And also I didn't really enjoy it. I like to kind of have some kind of agency, and depending on your agent, depending on your castability, it can be quite challenging. So I put an advert in a supermarket. And I thought, well, what am I good at? And I thought, well, I'm quite good at kind of talking. And so I put an advert saying, would you like to learn to speak with confidence? And that was in 1998. And I started to get all these people phone me up. My first client was an 8-year-old boy. It's the only child I've ever coached. But it was an 8-year-old boy, a little Indian boy called Dupinder. And he was just very shy, and his mother said, look, he needs some confidence. So I would just sit with him and chat and kind of try and bring him out of his shell. But over the kind of the 2 years that I was working with people, I had all kinds of fascinating people that I would work with. I had a truck driver, I had school teachers, I had a porn star. Seriously.
Did you?
I really did. And hers was really interesting because she said she had a really thick West Country accent, and she said, "I want to be taken seriously, and I need a better accent." So I said, "Okay." And I said, "How would you like to sound?" She went, "I'd like to sound like you." And I went, "Okay, fine." So I went to her apartment, and she had two Persian. I mean, this isn't an exaggeration. She had two Persian cats, and I sort of sat there giving her elocution lessons. And anyway, that all morphed into quite a big kind of like little private practice. And then I had a bet with someone I used to play cricket with. He said, "I bet you can't get a corporate client." And I went, "Okay, I bet you I can." So I literally, and this was out of pure naivety, I had no idea about the business world at all. And so I went on Google, and I thought 50 biggest companies in Britain. And I wrote to them all saying what I did. And 2 of them got back and said, "Come in." That was in the year 2000. And they said, "Okay, could you do a seminar?" And I went, "When you say seminar, you mean," because and they went, "Well, like talk for about 3 hours to a group of people." And I said, "I totally can, but I'm really busy. You got to give me 6 weeks." So I went and wrote the seminar in the 6 weeks.
Nice.
Delivered it. It went really well. They booked more and more and more. And within kind of 6 months, I had more work than I could handle. And that's kind of how it got started. And then in 2007, I branched out into the US, 2010, Hong Kong, 2014 went digital with sort of e-learning. And so it's just been a constant progression. So I'm still the CEO of Working Voices, and I still very much look after that company. But I guess the sustainable human is an opportunity for me because I've always helped people who've got a lot of advantages already. People spend a lot of money in the corporate world on learning and training. But I always think these skills are so important today because we're all kind of looking at our phones. And I wish we didn't, but we do.
I work with a lot of young people in my job.
Yeah.
And they're always staring at their phones. And I don't think it's necessarily a social media thing. I think it is actually the device. It's the mobile phone itself.
Yeah, they're designed to be unputdownable.
Yes, exactly that. Mm-hmm. Exactly that. Having all this power and this information and this connection as well. We are more connected than ever, but we are also more lonely.
Which is weird in itself, right?
Yeah, really weird.
But it's like Mark Zuckerberg would have you believe that we're all connected because that's good for business. But if you look at any social scientist, they will tell you the opposite. And they will say, we have epidemics of loneliness, anxiety, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think the first thing anyone who's got a phone, and I'm putting that in quotes, it's not a phone really, is it? It's a supercomputer. So we're carrying around something that was more powerful than the computer that sent, the space shuttle to the moon. And it nags us and notifies us constantly. Apparently, the average time that somebody in the Philippines spends on the phone a day is 6 hours. I think young people in this country is probably 4 or 5 hours. But just think about that. That's 3 full months of the year staring at a phone.
Oh my God, I'd never broken it down.
No,
like that.
it's terrifying when you think like that. And if I may, because I'm obviously, if I with speaking to you, I want to kind of give people some useful advice. There are several things you can do, because I bet you so many people watching this will have phone problems, or supercomputer problems, as I now call them. And you've got to decide, what is it you want to do instead of looking at your phone? You can't just say, I'm not going to look at my phone. It's like, well, do something else instead. But people have actually got to think about how they want to spend their lives, because the phone's just so easy. It's like at a party, we don't have to try and talk to people. We'll just be looking at our phone. We don't have to be awkward anymore. We don't have to be bored anymore. We don't have to do any of these things. So that's the first thing. It's like, what do you want to do instead? And then it's really important to make your phone as boring as possible. Like the screen. Have you heard of grayscale?
Yeah, I have.
Move all your apps to another screen, so they're not, you won't just automatically start looking at them. Does your phone wake you up in the morning?
No, I don't set an alarm.
Oh, you're one of those.
I'm one of those.
Very special.
It's taken a long time to get there.
What time did you get up?
About 5:15.
Oh God, wow, that's so impressive. That's the middle of the night for me. I'm very impressed.
But we haven't known each other long enough. You don't know what the alternative is. You don't know James from 10 years ago, who, I mean,
right.
If it was 10, 11 in the morning and I still wasn't out of bed, that wasn't a rare thing.
What time did you go to bed?
Oh God, 3, 4 in the morning.
And was that because you were partying?
Yeah, you could call it partying.
What would you call it?
I'd call it quite an abusive relationship with myself, I would say.
Right. So just hedonism.
Having
a great time.
Having a really good time
Until it wasn't.
On my own in my flat.
Ah, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was when things started to get bad. So I do totally sympathise with the sort of loneliness side of how people feel, because I know what that feels like.
Of course.
And I know what it's like to just have your phone. And I'd spend hours some evenings scrolling and messaging and watching and feeling connected and not feeling alone. But then you put that down and you are on your own.
Well, it sort of temporarily halts the sort of existential dread.
Yeah, exactly.
That we've all got.
Yeah.
But actually, isn't it better to face the existential nature of things? And actually, the best way to face the existential nature of things is to talk to someone about it who's also feeling like that. I mean, I'm not saying it's like AA, but the kind of the structure of AA is you need a drink. So you talk to other people who need a drink, and thus it stops you needing a drink, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But similarly, if people are lonely, the answer surely is not the phone, it's other people. And think about how many things now we used to do actively and we now do passively. So we used to go out to the cinema, we now watch streaming. We used to go to the shops, we now got our food delivered. So many aspects of our lives, we just press a button and it Shazam, it kind of happens with no effort. And it's really interesting. I'm not suggesting that humans need to suffer, but I do think the kind of constant march towards pleasure will make us suffer long term.
Or is it
it's almost paradoxical?
The cost of convenience as well.
I think you're exactly right. But the point is the way all of this is structured, it is structured like, what's the path of least resistance? The path of least resistance is to do it via the phone. The path of least, and it's like you've got to be deliberative, and it's nice to be surrounded by people who also get it. So you can do it as a group. That sort of social connection happens because you all agree that if we don't do it, we're going to lose something of ourselves. Because it's very easy to, you think about, every time you touch your phone and all that kind of stuff, you get a little dopamine hit. And every time you order something off Amazon, just one click, it's a dopamine hit. And I mean, you're smiling. I could tell this is something you can really relate to, but
100%.
But it's you know, times everyone pretty much in Britain, certainly most young people who are digital natives who've grown up on this kind of stuff. And my concern is like, where does all this end up? Because AI, we've only started really talking about AI in the last few years, right? So it's in its infancy. So in 10 years, my concern is like, what does this all look like in 10 years when, you know, there's a little thought experiment I do sometimes. And it's like, let's say you're hungry, but in 10 years, you've got a little patch you wear on your arm that knows when whatever hormone is up and knows you're hungry. And that will then talk to your phone, which talks to the smart fridge. The smart fridge says, oh, we haven't got any tomatoes, talks to Amazon, and Amazon will then deliver what you need. And eventually, your kind of agency or choice is just removed because your tech knows best. And that's the thing I really worry about, because being human is not supposed to be perfect. That's the joy of being human. So if you're in a relationship or something, or you have a friendship with somebody, it has ups and downs, but that's what makes it interesting. You know, when you go to an art gallery and you see art, like Picasso apparently, or was it Van Gogh? No, Van Gogh died without any of his art being published and thought he was a complete loser.
He thought he was a failure.
Yeah. But the point is, you know, that man suffered, and all this stuff that you see on the walls is just quite a damaged mind bringing something to life in a very special way. But if AI created that, it doesn't mean anything. So what I'm saying is, in the same way, the value of the art is the human that put it together. The value of everything really is the human that made it happen. And when AI takes all that away from you, what's the point of us?
What's left?
Yeah, exactly. What is left? And so, you know, this thing of making sure that people connect with one another now, while this process, we're in this sort of limbo land in between analog and AI. We've got to be kind of like really thinking about what sort of environment do we want to live in as people? What kind of relationships do I want? Because have you ever thought about the idea of like virtual relationships with a computer?
Oh, it's already out there.
It's there I get
already.
Sent adverts saying this is Sabrina.
Yeah.
And
there are apps where you are already in a virtual relationship with a system.
Sure. And
with an algorithm.
How does that make you feel?
On a personal level.
On a personal level.
The whole thing worries me. This is just one aspect of it, but I'm concerned about the whole of AI worries me.
Sure.
But if we're now taking one of the purest fundamentals of the human experience, falling in love, having a relationship, that at its core is one of the most simple pleasures that we can have as humans,
and almost the purest,
right? that you would argue couldn't be replicated, is being replicated.
Because if you think about it kind of just from a hormone perspective, it's like, you know, you get the dopamine hit of reward of seeing someone, you get the oxytocin when you bond, etc. And if your computer can do that for you because it understands you, and isn't the worry that because the computer will understand you better than a human, because it has infinite computing power and it's never ill, it's never grouchy, it doesn't have any baggage. And so it just becomes, again, easier, more convenient. And so you could just see like millions of men and women sitting in front of their computers every night, having this incredible relationship with AI, and then no one reproducing anymore. Because like, what's the point? Because it's messy.
Exactly. But it will also go even further than that. When you say then, when you reference then about, it won't get stroppy, you won't have an argument, but it will, because the algorithm is so strong and the AI is so advanced that it will recognize that a successful relationship has ups and downs,
needs a bit of
and
something.
Needs friction, and needs tension. So
but it'll be just enough.
Yeah, it'll be
so
just.
No one's walking out the door, and you can have makeup. I don't know. You can't have makeup sex, can you? You just have makeup. What?
They'll find
a makeup chat.
They'll find there'll be some sort of contraption that you can. You know there will be.
Sure. No. I mean, this is. I mean, but again, I do worry about us. I mean, have you heard of something called transhumanism?
Say that again.
transhumanism?
No.
Okay, so this is quite a big deal in Silicon Valley. So all these incredibly sort of wealthy billionaires from Silicon Valley, there's almost a philosophy there, and a lot of the writing to come out of that place talks about humans and technology merging eventually. So we're kind of merged already. We have these supercomputers we carry around, and we were kind of lost without them. It's like in the old days when you used to read a map, you had to learn how to read a map. Now the map gets read for you and you just have an arrow and you follow it, right? You don't have to remember anybody's number. Things get recommended for you because it knows you. So agency's already going. So we're sort of part there, but our supercomputers are just a bridge to the next supercomputer, which won't be as cumbersome. So again, so this transhumanism idea it's part of a much bigger philosophy, which does get into the sort of why a lot of people feel the way they do socially about certain kind of things. But we'll maybe talk about that a bit later. But the transhumanism bit is this sort of humans and technology merging. Now that's brilliant for health. And the thing is, when we're talking about AI, health, education, logistics, amazing. Let's develop, let's go. So we can all have healthier lives. Brilliant. But the point is, you don't seem to be able to contain it. So whereas it's terrific in the health sphere, it's very concerning in the human sphere, but it's all happening together. And where's the, like you've got sort of a nuclear treaty between nations who will kind of get together and make sure that nukes don't get into the wrong hands and no one fires them by mistake, et cetera, et cetera. That's not happening at all with AI.
No.
And again, I just think someone should do something.
Well, it's just a race to the top at the moment, isn't it? Without any sort of guidelines or thought.
And it's all about money.
And it's all about what? It's all about money. It's
and
about power, money, developing. That's the real concern. I mean, if you think back to when the internet was first released into the wild, and there was a bit of a rush for that. This is a similar kind of thing in terms of it's going to be developed and it's useful. And we don't even, as mere mortals, we don't really understand quite where it's going to head yet. Although I think we have ideas,
I mean, I don't know if any of this is going to happen, but it's a possibility, isn't it?
Well, I think it's more than a possibility.
It's certainly concerning, and I think humans do really well when they have some kind of rules and structure, and that all seems to be breaking down because of the internet. It's like, you've got this stuff around sort of total free speech. I'm not sure that's really a thing, because total free speech means that you can say what you like, even if it harms other people. You just have to kind of suck it up. But then that turns into bullying and harassment and all these other really nasty, dark things that happen. So I think everything needs to be moderated to a degree so we can have a civic society.
Do the tech gurus not have a responsibility though? That they need to start creating technology that does bring us closer together instead of making us more obscure.
And what would that look
to
like?
each other? I don't know.
No, but that's the point.
But that's what I mean. We need to. But I guess how do you monetize that, and what does that look like on a platform?
You just kind of answered your own question, because if you think about it, Zuckerberg, and I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is evil, but I think he loves his business more than anything else. So he started Facebook to connect people at universities, these Ivy League universities. Good idea. But there was a meeting in 2007, I think it was, when, Facebook wasn't doing well financially, and they just decided, let's do advertising. And that's when, okay, how do we get attention? Oh, you get people angry. You get people, feeling a sense of injustice and outrage and all this kind of stuff. And they found, whoa, the numbers just go skyrocket. And that's probably very, very difficult to turn down, because it's easy money. And you can explain it away with all kinds of PR and whatever. But, we know that young people are self-harming. There's suicide's gone up. And do you know of an author called Jonathan Haidt?
Yes,
He's a social psychologist.
I do know that name, yeah.
He wrote a book recently called The Anxious Generation.
Yes, I've seen it. I've not read it, but I've seen it, yeah.
I went to see him speak, and he's been talking about this for years. And you could tell he's kind of at the end of his tether, because, he's trying to talk to governments and trying to get them to understand that not only are young people more unhappy than they've ever been, but no one's protecting them because, as if you're a parent, you don't know what your child is looking at. I mean, it was very unusual to be looking at something like a beheading or extreme pornography in the 80s. It just didn't happen. But now you can just go on Twitter and go, oh, look, there's someone having their head cut off. I'm not sure how good that is for people's nervous systems.
It's really not, and there's no guidelines. The young boy who murdered the poor girls in Southport at the dance class.
Yeah.
They found out that he'd been looking at the most extreme things, and he was a child.
Yeah.
He'd been looking at really extreme things. He knew how to make bombs. He knew how to cause maximum amount of harm, and he'd researched it. Apparently he was watching videos on the way to commit this atrocity.
So he was radicalizing himself.
He was radicalizing himself. Yeah.
And of course, and again, this is just unfortunately because the world is a really cruel and unfair place, but apparently his parents, I think, fled the Rwandan genocide.
Right.
So he comes from a very violent, I mean, he wasn't obviously around then, but who knows? But I'm not sure how helpful it is for people to have access to anything.
No, I agree.
Because humans, we're flawed and not all of us are totally balanced. In fact, I don't know, I've never met anyone who's totally balanced, right? So we've all got our flaws and the internet has a funny way of finding our weaknesses.
So are you looking for more guidelines? Are you looking for for governments to take more responsibility? Is that where your research and your work's taken you?
No, because I don't think they will.
You don't think that's going to happen?
No, I'm interested. The sustainable human is about what can you as an individual do to protect yourself. So like how can you analyze your experience of the world? What actions can you take in order to inoculate yourself? And there are several things you can do. I mean, if all the stuff we've been talking about is happening, it's ongoing, it's probably getting worse. And I feel really sorry for young people, not because they haven't got wonderful access to knowledge, which I never had, which is amazing, but the sheer overwhelming nature of information, and a lot of it's poor information, it's misinformation or disinformation, and what I call malinformation, which is just gossip and slander and all that kind of stuff. But no one is really teaching people how to do the other thing. And so for me, the other thing is, okay, observe how life is, agree that you're going to need, as Liam Neeson would say, a special set of skills, right, to prosper. And then what are those skills? And so for me, it's like, well, if we're looking at our phones too much, what's the antidote to that? Well, you want to interact with people more. But a lot of people feel lonely and isolated and don't know how to do that. So the sustainable human is about saying, okay, so how do you build your social intelligence? How do you build social connections? Because what's really interesting is we're all nervous of going up and speaking to people. But what I've noticed is that 99 times out of 100, you go up and say hello to someone and they go, hi. Yeah. And it's always a pleasant experience. Very, very rarely are people unkind. And if they are, that's kind of, they're having a bad day or whatever. But most people like to connect. It's a very, human and satisfying thing to do. So this isn't challenging. It's just, we're not doing it because we're not encouraged to do it. And so I guess what I'm saying is, governments will do what governments do, but I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not going to set up a pressure group. What I do want to do is set up a sort of a community of people who are trying to connect with other people. So you give people the skills, it gives them confidence. They connect with people, that's going to help them. And you create a sort of a chain reaction of connection.
You pay it forward.
Yeah. And there's a really cool little bit of research done by an organization called the New Economics Foundation. And I found about this years ago. And it was like, I'll play this game with you. Okay. So there are 5 things, according to them, that make a human being happy. And they sort of publish their results. What do you think they are?
There's 5 things. Relationships.
Excellent. That's number 1.
Of course it is. Health.
Yes.
Health, well-being.
Yep. Exercise. Moving. Because we're designed to move. Yep. This is good. 2 out of 2.
This is where the wheels come off.
No. This is really, really good. I mean, the most important thing is you haven't said money. because money's not on the list.
No, I wouldn't have. No, I wouldn't have put money on the list because
You'd be surprised how many people do.
Yeah, it's just that sort of world. Food and drink, consuming. No, okay.
No. I mean, I suppose that all goes into sort of the number 2 health and wellbeing.
Yeah, I guess. No, I can't think.
Okay, so number 3 is being in the moment.
Mindfulness.
Not really. I mean, mindfulness, we always think of people sort of just sitting and meditating.
No.
But just being like if you're having a great conversation, time flies.
Yeah, this is mindfulness.
Exactly.
I am existing in this space with you right now. We're having this conversation in this lovely studio. I'm not thinking about
Anything
shit that
else.
might happen
Yeah.
or shit that has happened. I'm here.
Yeah, and
I'm present.
Yeah, exactly, being present. And so many people suffer because they're thinking of something that's happened or something that's going to happen, and they're not. You're usually safe now, and so many people feel unsafe. So yes, being present. The 4th is just the acquisition of knowledge, learning more.
Learning.
So like, I don't know a lot about opera, right?
Fair.
But if I went to an opera, if I read up about it, I listened to some of the music beforehand, I looked at the history, maybe the actors I would appreciate it more. So when I learn about stuff, I enjoy it more. And the world is full of fascinating things, from science to the arts to whatever, that you can learn. Anyway, so that's the first 4. So relationships, exercise, being present, knowledge. And the 5th one, which goes back to what I was suggesting, is giving. Not money, but your time to make other people happy. And that was the big conclusion they came out with. And of course, it makes so much sense. Everybody knows that if you, on Christmas, you get more pleasure out of seeing someone open the present you got them than you opening a present yourself, right?
But it can be giving advice. It can be giving your time.
Being there, you're listening, yeah.
Yeah. Being a good friend.
Being a good friend. And we spend so much time abdicating our responsibility to texting rather than talking. I'm not suggesting there isn't a place for texting. Of course there is. But if we just spend more time trying to kind of connect with people in a whole fashion rather than just partially, I think that could be useful.
What happens if those 5 things that you just noticed, what if people start to derive happiness from an online version of those things? Because that, I think, is where we are now, is that relationships, well, you can have your relationships online.
But then are they as satisfying?
No, but if you don't know the difference,
yeah, but that's
the danger.
No, I guess you're right.
That's the danger, isn't it?
Well, I think the problem is if it can be commoditized, it will be. And I think the thing about these 5 things, they're all free, which is kind of where it sort of works against, everything is commodified now. Everything is monetized. And that's where I suppose the unsettling nature of being alive in the 2025 comes from. Just, you're constantly being bombarded with buy this, and I know you'll get this on your Instagram feed or whatever you're on. Whether it's creatine or shilajit mushrooms or NMN or something to make you either look better, live longer, whatever. We're always being told it's never enough, right? But the happiest people I've met have relatively simple lives that aren't encumbered by buying loads of stuff. They're just generally happy because they like their friends and they're curious. And I suppose putting a wrapper around all of the stuff we're talking about at the moment, it's because I think humans are adapting to this new tech lifestyle, but we're not evolving into it. It's like our evolution remains the same. We're the same people we were 1,000 years ago. We just wear different clothes and we have more sophisticated language, but we're still like
fundamentally the same.
Exactly. So we still fundamentally need the same things to actually make us complete. And technology kind of bypasses that and pushes the right buttons like a fruit machine, but it's not. Well, it's not as satisfying.
Isn't there an argument that we're not evolving, we're devolving in that case? Then that if we've reached a point as a species that all the things that made us grow, made us evolve, made us happy, if they're all now being stripped away from us by our own choices and our own accord, we don't have to have a smartphone. We don't have to be connected.
Well, do we not? Well, is not your life on the smartphone?
No, but this is why the work that you're doing is so vital and so important. But is there not an argument that we're kind of going backwards now? That we've reached a pinnacle and we're just everything, we don't have to go and discover things because, as you say, we've got the supercomputer in our hand.
Yeah, well, it's an excellent point because it depends what you value. Now, it seems to me that society values, when they say progress, that's technology. It's like, and you think with something like health, you know, an incredible sort of CT scan that can spot early stage, whatever, you go, that's amazing. And that is to be celebrated and invested in, fantastic. But you're right. When it comes to the human experience, maybe that's correct. We are sort of regressing. We're going backwards because we're not completely fulfilling the things that make us. And we all know we can feel it. And the problem is for younger people, they don't know what to compare it to because they've always had the supercomputer in their hands. And so, you know, I was in my 20s in the 90s, and it was a wonderful, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, the world still had problems, but there was a general feeling that the world was going in a good direction. It was pre 9/11 when the whole terrorism thing happened, and it was pre smartphones. It was pre the Great Recession.
It was pre social media.
Yeah. And your mind wasn't jumbled the way it was, but we take in so much information. And of course, everyone's got to have an opinion on everything now. And most of us aren't qualified to talk about most things, but we are asked to have a view on it. And so, you know, you've got billions of people with an opinion. It just leads to lots of acrimony.
Yeah, because we're all sort of lost in our own thoughts rather than actually working on ourselves, I suppose. Because if you're thinking about sort of self-improvement, that's something that seems to be fallen by the wayside. You know, the ideas of discipline and of you know, knowledge and constant effort. Those things don't exist on the same scale anymore, I don't think.
Well, I think there are people who will, but they're now then set up as kind of almost influencers or exemplars of, you know,
like gurus.
Someone like David Goggins.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Who said, you know, I shed 110 pounds in 3 months, and look at me, I can run for 2 days and only need a glass of water.
He's mad.
But and again, there is nothing wrong with having aspirational people, but the only problem with that is no one's going to be David Goggins except David Goggins, right? And it's okay to just be you and be flawed, but I think it's like, well, society won't accept you being just yourself. And also, what are we judged on? Are we judged on the sort of the size of our biceps, or are we judged on how kind we are to people? And is kindness although everyone agrees kindness is a good thing, is kindness seen as the thing we need to strive for? Probably not. When actually, if the world was a little bit kinder and more thoughtful, I think there'd be less anxiety and there'd be less self-harm, there'd be less suicide, because people would feel in touch. I just think the tech is just slowly just moving us away from each other.
Yeah, it's
and when we are
eroding
focused, we're focused on maybe stuff that doesn't help us, but certainly adds to the economy.
So this is all part of the sustainable human then? All of this is about bringing people together out in the real world. It's quite a not to make light of your life's work, but it's quite a basic sort of concept, really, isn't it? Put your phone down, connect with people, get back to basics, really.
Yeah, and you would argue that there is absolutely no need for me to be doing this. No, but you could, except there is.
But there is, massively.
Because no one's doing it, right? And isn't that interesting? Because there's loads of professions out there that are there because humans aren't good at doing stuff that should come naturally. So like dietitians. Why do we have dietitians? Because everyone knows, don't eat junk food, eat good food, right? But we don't. So we go to an expert who'll say, well, you want to eat this and you want to eat that and whatever. I mean, you know, when I started working voices, you would have thought, well, communicating, right? Well, isn't that obvious? Isn't this common sense? But the problem is, because people have imperfect lives and childhoods and experiences, they don't have necessarily the confidence to speak up and connect with people. And there's so many reasons why people aren't particularly good. In fact, to meet a really good communicator is more unusual than meeting a poor communicator. So I would say for my business, my main business, it's a similar thing. It's like I teach a lot of common sense, but I think within the common sense, there are techniques that can help you to become more accomplished at those core skills. Like, how do you listen well? I mean, we know that people find it a challenge to listen to other people. And I think that, one of the nicest things you can do to someone else is give them your attention, because it's in short
100%.
supply.
Well, it's one of the greatest gifts you can give someone is your time. Time is the greatest asset that we have. It's the greatest gift. So taking those skills, so taking the stuff from Working Voices and moving over to the Sustainable Human.
Yeah.
What's been the most interesting part of what you've discovered with working with people? Kind of, I'm going to say out in the real world again. I'm sorry, I should stop saying that, but you know what I mean. What's been the most interesting part of it? What have you learned? What have you come across?
Well, I think the interesting thing is just how similar the challenges are. It doesn't matter what walk of life you're from, whether you're sort of a 50-year-old man or a 17-year-old girl. It doesn't really, the intrinsic problems are the same. And I suppose the thing I noticed, I do a lot of my work by just asking people questions and seeing what they come up with and trying to get them to kind of tease out what the problems are. I mean, a lot of people say, I'm really unconfident. And I'll go, well, why is that? And they go, well, I because I don't feel I can do something. And I go, well, why not? And actually, once you just start to drill down, they're just in a sort of like a cycle and a syndrome. And actually, and they say, I've got imposter syndrome or whatever, which is very common now. But actually, because we spend so much time passive on the phone, we're not doing anything. And the people who put the phone down and go and do things find their confidence picks up really quickly because they're doing it. It's like, driving. Yeah. Can you drive?
Yeah.
Right. So when you first started driving, I'm sure you were pretty ropey, right? Because
oh my God, of course, I was a nightmare.
But if you get in the car regularly with an instructor or just with your dad or whatever, and you start driving, eventually you start to pick it up. And then if I said to you, are you confident driving? You go, of course I am, because you've just done it a lot. And, if I think back to that, my first advert, would you like to learn to speak with confidence? We all speak all the time, but it's just, what is the quality of those interactions? And do we put ourselves in a position where we can improve? Because you don't really get any better unless there's a certain amount of jeopardy. If you try and coast and go for the easy option, like I'm never going to volunteer for this because I don't want to do it, well, then you won't get any better.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is just, and so I try and do workshops and create a space where people can just try stuff, and it doesn't matter if you're good, bad, or indifferent. You'll definitely be better when you leave than when you arrive, because you're going to have a go at stuff. And so I try and do stuff that's quite practical and sort of earthy.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that was going to be my next question. Was what's the practical side of that look like? Because if you're dealing with people who are spending their whole times on their phones and on social media, I want to talk to you about social media in a minute.
Yeah.
Are people? It's not just that people have lost the skills to be able to communicate and to form real life relationships. It's that they're scared of it as well. It's unknown to them.
Well, also we have, again, this disconnect between what normal is and what we see online. So online, you get a lot of very polished performances. Yeah. So podcasters and influencers, we know that there's a lot of kind of dressing of the set, so to speak, especially with influencers. Look at my perfect life, look at my perfect body, look at my perfect lunch. And so people think, I can't do that. But that's not normal. And so that never used to really happen to the degree it happens, because, okay, you'd watch telly for like an hour in the evening and then you go out with your friends who are all normal. But now if we're on our phone all the time and all we're seeing are these glamorous people doing glamorous things, everyone's richer than you, everyone's better looking than you, did it, all that kind of stuff. Eventually it's going to lead to a confidence deficit because you're thinking that's unobtainable, but it's also not true, right? So again, only by bringing people together, getting them to interact. I mean, a lot of the work that I would do in a session would be showing people how to listen and give people attention and really drill down and help them to understand that if you want to be really good at people, become really interested in other people. Because people are fascinating.
But it's the best way to communicate and connect with somebody is to ask them questions. I go back to when I was single and going on dates. If I wasn't feeling particularly confident in myself that day, or I was having a shit hair day or whatever it was, I wasn't really up for the date. I would just ask questions. I'd go, right, okay, for the next hour, all I'm going to do is ask questions, partly because I am interested, similar to you, in people, but actually because it diffuses everything immediately and puts people at ease. And then you build that rapport by being inquisitive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And of course, people build confidence when someone says, I'm actually interested in you, or how you feel about something. So it builds confidence.
But it has to be authentic as well. There has to be some authenticity behind that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just nonsense.
Funnily enough, I remember when it comes to dating, someone asked Bill Clinton, why were you so popular with the ladies when you were at Oxford? And he said, I'd just listen. That was my thing. I'd listen and ask questions, and it seemed to be quite successful. But that's someone who has superior interpersonal skills. I mean, obviously it went a bit off the rails, but you understand, he's a very persuasive person because he's genuinely interested, or he's perfected the idea of pretending to be genuinely interested.
I think it's that one. I think he's perfected the image.
But I think as a politician, he understands that the way to build your tribe is to be interested in their needs.
Yeah, of course,
etc. But yeah, just it's remarkable how revelatory finding out about a person can be when it's not on a screen and it's in real life. But then it's being happy to do the messy bit. They're not perfect. They're going to have bad hair days. They're going to be feeling unwell or sad about something. And they're not always perfect.
You've got to be vulnerable. That's something that, when you're talking about taking risks and you're talking about putting yourself out there, being vulnerable. If I'm chatting to somebody on a dating app, for example, and I say something stupid, or I tell a joke, for example, and they don't find it funny, I can just unmatch and I've lost nothing. I can carry on with my day. But without that jeopardy, the depth of the interaction and the depth of the potential relationship is just not there. It's just words on a screen. It's just pictures.
I mean, so you've done a bit of dating app stuff?
Yeah, I've done some dating app stuff.
And how do you feel about the process of doing it via the screen?
So you'll be pleased to hear. You'll like this. Very in keeping. If I have ever matched with anyone before on a dating app,
right,
I will, within the first few sentences, I'll make sure they're not completely insane, and then I'll say, I find that's really important.
Yeah. Rule number one.
Yeah. How many bodies in your freezer? But I will almost immediately say, let's grab a coffee.
Yeah.
Like I have no desire to try and get to know you on a screen with typing. I have no desire, for a number of reasons. Firstly, because I think I'm wise enough, and also I'm born in 1983, so I also do. The 90s was that simpler, lovely time where we fostered those connections, and they were important.
You look younger.
Stop.
You
do you know why it is?
Go on.
It's because I haven't had a proper job in like 24 years.
Lucky you.
I know. There's a 22-year gap on my CV.
Really?
Yeah.
Good for you.
I sold suspended ceiling tiles in the millennium, 2000.
Right.
2000, 2001. Then I went to drama school, and that's where my CV ends.
Yeah, but you say that, but acting and the arts is fundamental to society.
We know that, but they don't.
I mean, where would we be without culture, right?
Listen, I could have this. Listen, you and me are on the same team here. I'll have that argument till I'm blue in the face. But people don't think that our skills translate as well as we do. Well,
what's interesting in my game, so many of the people who do what I do are actors or ex-actors, because they've learned these skills and they're transferable, and you can then take them into the workplace. I mean, think of any good entrepreneur. Then they haven't just had a good idea; they have to go and talk to
you have to communicate it,
raise money, and,
absolutely,
be a good leader and all that kind of stuff. So these skills are vital, So don't do yourself down.
I'm trying not to. I'm very, very humble, Nick. Let's talk about social media.
Okay.
Let's talk about social media. I don't have a Facebook account pick a reason, basically. I don't have a Twitter account for very, very similar reasons. I do use TikTok.
Me too.
Do you?
I love TikTok.
Well, I do, but I also understand that TikTok wants me to love TikTok, and TikTok spends a lot of money to make sure that I enjoy TikTok.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I've had a bit of a binge, if I've been on TikTok for an hour or so, and I put my phone down,
Goes like that, doesn't it? Yep.
But I also do feel guilt. I do feel shame and guilt.
Why do you feel the shame?
Why do I feel the shame and the guilt? Because I don't feel like it's a truthful experience of entertainment. It's been curated so perfectly for me to keep me staring at my screen that the authentic response that you have when you watch a movie or you listen to a concerto or you whatever that is is personal to me. If I watch if I watch a Tarantino movie, the reaction that I have is going to be unique to me.
Yeah.
But if I'm watching TikTok, their algorithm is so deep and so layered that it just feels false. I don't know if the pleasure that I'm getting from TikTok is real or if it's just their algorithm is working in full effect.
Okay, so two things. One, are you talking about the For You feed or following feed?
For You.
Right. So that's mistake number one, isn't it? So you'll get stuff from For You, and then I would say to anyone starting TikTok, if you or ditch your account and start again, my TikTok. And I was totally anti-TikTok until I started using it. And I thought, this is really
That's
really
how they
cool.
get you.
No, but I don't use I go on For You for a very, very limited amount and I trawl it to see if there's anything I like. And then I will put it on following. So my following is full of philosophy, film. I'm really into movies. I love movies. And so film kind of appreciation or film studies, anything like that. Quite interested in politics. So I'll follow the BBC or the New York Times. So funnily enough, what I'm trying to do is create a TikTok that's a bit like TikTok in China. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the whole, they shut it off at 8 o'clock.
They banned it in the US and then everybody went over to
Red Note
in China and found out what was really going on in China. And it was loads of happy Chinese people having a great time and paying very low tax.
Well, I'm actually, one of my colleagues lives in China and he loves it. He says it's a really, he's married to a Chinese national and his kids are Chinese and he highly recommends it. I'm not suggesting that obviously China doesn't have its problems, which it does with human rights abuses and whatever. But what I mean by it is TikTok in America is just 24/7 loads of crap. And most people don't curate well enough. TikTok in China is kids can look at it. It's shut off at 8 o'clock. You can't look at it after 8 o'clock. And you only get a certain amount of time. And what they offer the kids in China are classical music, ballet, art. It's completely different. So you've got this very refined kind of version of TikTok in China. And then you get the junk food version in America.
It's a beneficial version of TikTok.
Absolutely. And so what I try and do is my TikTok following are people I think are really interesting. And so when I do go on TikTok, I don't find so I'm saying, again, this is something else I teach in my sustainable human class. It's like, I'm not saying don't be on social media, but if you are, take responsibility for it and have a social media feed that you want. Another thing is I never post on social media. I'm not interested. I mean, only for business, like to say, come to the Sustainable Human, but I've got a personal feed, which I never post on because it doesn't really, I don't see the value of doing it. If you have something important to say, perhaps, but for me, I can use it as education. There's a brilliant guy on it, and he does these little 2-minute philosophy bites where he explains some philosophical concept. It's wonderful. And I'll see him every day. There's a guy called Ollie, and I've got to do a shout out to him. He's a Crystal Palace fan. He's called Ollie Thomas, I think, and he is my favorite football influencer. And he's really he's a 25-year-old kid from South London, and he's incredibly articulate. And following him on TikTok is brilliant. He teaches me stuff, some observations about football that I didn't realize. But I can cut out all the dross. And that's all I'm saying. If you're going to eat good food. If you're going to be on social media, curate healthier content. I'm not suggesting it's perfect, but that's why I don't go on Instagram, because Instagram is much more about vanity and look at me and look at my car and my clothes and whatever. And I prefer TikTok as a resource personally. And Twitter is obviously turned into a cesspool of racism and anger and hate.
It used to be so much fun, you know.
I know.
I used to love Twitter back in the day.
Yeah, Elon has really wrecked it.
He really has.
He's such a strange guy.
He's such a weird guy.
Well, I think he wants to be popular and he's found his tribe. Unfortunately, his tribe are...
the worst people.
Well, bullies. And it's interesting about Elon Musk because obviously, you know, you see this, you know, remarkable businessman who's an engineer and he's had a lot of success with, you know, with the cars and the rockets, and that's amazing. But if you think about it, he freely admits he's on the spectrum. I think he's got Asperger's or whatever. But then you are the least qualified person on earth to run a social network, which is about people. And his kind of very convenient, like total free speech, it doesn't really work because it drives people away from Twitter who just don't want to get bullied all the time. And also he's encouraging the worst of us. So, I mean, I've been on Twitter for many years. I won't call it X, that's just childish, right? But I've been on Twitter for many years. And since he bought it, it's just got worse and worse and worse. And and if you go on the For You, which I never do, but if you flip over just to have a look, it'll be Elon. This guy called David Sachs, who's a mate of Elon's, Jordan Peterson, Nigel Farage. I mean, it's just like, it's right-wing daily. And again, that's not free speech.
No.
That's a curated political viewpoint that doesn't create what he wanted, which was this amazing town square. I don't think the town square exists on...
No, it doesn't.
Or if it does, it's like Back to the Future 2, where everything's kind of gone to shit, you know?
He burnt it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a shame.
It does...
I hope someone will buy it off him and return it to former glory.
I can't see it. But it does worry me because, as I said before, none of it seems real. Like I was reading about the algorithm for the TikTok For You page.
Yeah.
And it is so deep and so layered. It's terrifying how it is there.
I don't even know what it looks like.
Oh my God.
Is it just lots of numbers and kind of like
code.
square roots? And,
it's code, but it's on so many deep levels. So if you and I were both, are you on iPhone?
Yeah.
Right. So TikTok knows that you and I are in the same room together right now. They know that our locations are in the same room.
Oh, of course.
For example, right?
Yeah. You should put lead walls around it so no one knows.
Yeah, we will need lead suits. But no, it knows who you're with. It knows what the person you're with is into, what they're more likely to talk about, what you might have talked about.
Yeah.
Things that we've got in common. So it will know on some level that we're both football fans.
Yeah.
So it will take all that information from both of us, feed that into the algorithm, and that's before everything else that it already knows about you, based on your search history, based on your relationships with previous social media platforms,
and how long you wait on a picture or whatever.
And then in real time, it's checking how long you're looking at material for, whether you're swiping up, whether you're swiping back, whether you might put your phone down and go and make a cup of tea and come back. It knows all of this stuff.
But that's now.
Yeah, exactly.
What's it going to be like in 5-10 years?
Oh, terrifying.
And the thing is, you know, a lot of sort of, again, freedom people say we don't want a surveillance economy and a surveillance state, but we're gladly offering up all our data for free to these massive companies that are privately owned and not accountable. And yeah, this sort of super intelligence is going to be, you know, concerning for all of us, I think.
Yeah, and it's a replacement. We are to bring the conversation full circle. It's a replacement for all those really interesting one-on-one meetings and connections that we have. We're replacing it with what exactly? It's none of it's tangible. I read somewhere that almost half of Gen Z wish that social media didn't exist, and they're one of the generations that use it the most.
Sure, and I'm sure that half are using it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's like, I wish I'd just stop eating burgers as you eat a burger. No, but the people are just addicted. And
Yeah. But what I don't know what the answer is.
the answer is being deliberative. I mean, I always hope that there is a kind of like the pendulum swings in one direction, it'll swing back, and that humans. I mean, you do get like little pockets of people who create smartphone-free zones. And walks in the country or libraries, or you see all that, right?
I went to a gig, right? I went to see Paolo Nutini at the Cavern Club in Liverpool last year.
Right.
Oh my God. Phones were banned.
Great. A lot of people do that.
Phones were banned. You had to put your phone in a little wallet with a little thing on, little clip on it.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get it back till the end.
Yeah.
And it's the most biblical gig I've ever been to. I'm not a massive Paolo Nutini fan, but my God.
But everyone was really connected, right?
Mate, the sweat was dripping off the walls.
Wow.
You looked around and everybody was smiling, everybody was singing, everybody was hugging.
Yeah.
There was no, and it actually felt less moody than gigs often do. I go to a lot of gigs and festivals and venues and things in my life, and a lot of them, there's a vibe. You can feel something might kick off in a minute. And there was none of that. And I swear it was because there was no phones. Everyone was connected. Whereas last week I went to a rave. I went to a DJ. I'm so white middle class. I went to a rave.
You went to a rave?
I went to a rave. I got my whistle and my glow stick and I raved. I went to a DJ thing and we walked through the crowd to get to the posh area where we were luckily put. And it was awful. It was awful. It was horrific.
Why? Because everyone was on their phone.
Everyone was on their phones. The DJ was playing, and everybody was doing that.
But the thing is, no one ever looks back at this stuff.
No, that's my argument. You're never going to watch it back.
I know.
Who are you videoing it for?
That's maybe they're videoing it so they can show other people that this is where I was. I mean, there's an amazing split photo I saw once of Ratzinger Pope and Benedict Pope. I think it's the Pope. Whoever the Pope before last and the current Pope. And people there for when they did their first kind of chat or the first kind of like speech. And the first one, everyone's just looking at the Pope. The second one, everyone's doing that. And there's just a sea of, and this is the problem. It really sort of sums up how phones have become this, you just have to do it. But I think actually a lot of, a friend of mine went to see Queens of the Stone Age, I think it was. And they just said, if anyone takes their phone out, they're going to get ejected.
Love that.
A, because they don't want their stuff to be recorded. But B, it's like, just it's number 3, be present.
Be present.
Enjoy it for what enjoy the people around you. Have this sort of community because it's a group experience, right?
If we're ever in a situation where we're on our own, that's when I get ponderous and I get a little bit internalized, and I love to reminisce about the things and the exciting adventures that I've had and the conversations I've had. I'm not going back through photos and videos and because it doesn't have
the resonance, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, our brain is the most powerful.
The reason is
creative instrument.
Yeah, we like to tell stories.
Yeah,
and if you just say, "Look at this picture," that's like a snapshot. But if you say, "Well, let me tell you what the evening was like," that's like an anecdote, and you're painting a picture, and people are using their imagination, and you're saying how you felt, and it's just richer. And of course, another really interesting part of the way we communicate now is that a lot of it's transactional because we're in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why text messaging is so prevalent, and emojis because they're quick. But actually, we tend to remember things when they're put in a narrative structure. So again, one of the things I try and coach people to do is tell really compelling stories with a beginning, a middle, and end. And I mean, a story can be 10 seconds. It doesn't have to be long. But it needs to be something that people can hang their imagination on. So when they leave, like a week later, they go, "Oh, I remember this guy was talking about X." And they can remember because of the structure of the way you presented it. If you just give me a load of data, I'm going to forget it because I've got nothing to hang it on. That's the way the memory works.
Yeah,
right?
it's the memory game. It was like, what was that old game show with Bruce Forsyth?
Oh, play cards. No, hold on.
No, not play.
Oh, Generation Game.
Generation Game.
Yeah. When you had to remember.
That was
the
right.
cuddly toy.
Yeah. So you had to remember all the things that came down. And I remember sitting with my mum and dad. I'm sure it was my dad because he's got this weird memory. I'm sure it was him. Who was telling me about creating a story with all the things that came around. So to remember it, he'd go, right, the rabbit came out of the teapot and then it got into the little toy car and created that. And that was how he would remember it.
That's amazing. And that's exactly the way people do it. If you look at these sort of illusionists and whatever who can remember huge kind of long kind of lists of items,
that's how
they just tell a story and it's all very vivid.
So you think is storytelling something that we're losing as well then?
Well, it's being morphed and AI'd. So again, the labor, and I mean that in a good way, not a pejorative, but the labor of making a story, which helps to activate our imagination and our memory, etc., that's being outsourced to the cloud. And so, when we have to remember something, it's on the cloud. So I just press a button if I want to know. When I was a kid, I was really into cricket. I still am. I love cricket. And I used to sit, this is so sad. I used to sit in my bed all night just reading wisdom and reading statistics. I could tell you the stats, everyone's batting average, when I was about 10. And I've still got that in my head, by the way. But the point is now if I wanted to know someone's batting average, I just kind of I look it up. So my point is a bit like the gym. Use it or lose it, right? You've got to keep yourself physically healthy so you can do the things you want to do. And I would say it's exactly the same for the mind. Your memory and your storytelling capability and regularly getting out and connecting with people and listening and empathizing, those are muscles, are social muscles you have to use all the time. And if you use them all the time, you're going to have loads of confidence and you'll be really popular. If you go out and make an effort with people and you like the people, you're far more likely to be liked.
Yeah,
it's because it's a reciprocal.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, it's a scary thing. I wonder what it's going to be like in the future. I know you've mentioned it a couple of times now. Where we're headed, in what direction are we going? But where does it end with AI and with everything? It's terrifying.
Well, it ends with something called the singularity, which the people in sort of Silicon Valley will explain that's when AI can teach itself and its super intelligence. And that's I think the stuff of nightmares that people really worry about, that it just becomes overwhelming. We can't stop it. So that's where it kind of ends up. But of course, AI engineers and scientists are split about whether this is real or whether it's science fiction. But the point is, it might be real. I mean, all the things we can do now, 30, 40 years ago, we weren't sure we could do it, and now we can do it. So again, coming back to what we were talking about earlier, it's like we need to put safeguards in place to make sure that we're looking after ourselves. Again, the transhuman bit, are we, that picture of the chimp standing up and then turning into man, that one. Yeah. But are we not the last part?
Yeah, is there more?
Is super intelligence or robots that are far more intelligent than us, are they next? Or have we created that? Because we make this huge assumption that, it's just turned into us because it took millions of years, but this is taking decades. I mean, again, I don't know, but it does worry me.
We have to invest in ourselves as a species. We have to start looking after the things that we can do that the AI and the robots and the computers can't.
And what is that?
Well, first of all, that's connections, that's relationships. It's love. It's all of those things that the emotion, they're the things that make us us. So we have
consciousness.
Consciousness.
But I think some people think that AI will eventually get, I don't know, but there's a possibility AI, when you reach a singularity, it has some form of consciousness.
Christ. I worry about I worry about my industry as well. I worry about the creative space, because for a long time, when we were talking about, and reading about it was all over the media about the development of AI and what that would look like. I think arrogantly or naively, I think creatives for the most part thought, well, they can't touch us because you can't recreate what's in here. You can't recreate my interpretation of a script. You can't interpret my poetic musings on that tree. You can't, but
Can't you?
We can. Well, we can.
Well, there's a lot of tripe on Netflix, right? Because remember, it's there's a lot of content, and it wouldn't surprise me if in the next few years, if you think of something like ChatGPT, it's only as good as the inputs.
Yeah.
So if you put amazing inputs in, and they work out how to say, create me a 90-minute script, because they've worked out that 90 minutes is the sort of perfect sweet spot. A 90-minute script, a bit like this. Here are the characters. Please develop blah blah blah, and they just get that well, and then they knock out a script that's like 80% there, and then all you do is touch it up, and then you send it into production. You can see that happening.
I bet that's already happening.
Yeah,
I guarantee that's already happening.
Yeah, and that worries me.
Yeah, it worries me
because
too.
Again, if you think of the great movie scripts of all time, that was these writers are celebrated for doing something like I said you love Tarantino, right? And that sort of dialogue you get, in Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and whatever. And it's just
they're the moments of Tarantino that I love the most. I'm not. It's not the hyper violence or anything like that. I can take that or leave it. It's
the dialogue, right?
It's the dialogue, man.
Yeah, of course. And it's when I remember going to see Reservoir Dogs with all my friends from drama school in the early 90s, and we all just came out going, wow, that was amazing. And it's a very small film, but the dialogue was just so amazing. But the thing is, you could program into AI, give me a film about this, and do it in the style of Quentin Tarantino. Of course, they'll have 10 scripts that already just there, and they'll just, mix and match. And before you know it, it's a bit like Tarantino. And then he got actors to do a Tarantino. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be sad.
And then cast it for me as well. You could put that out.
But actually, what I would say is, and this is where I'm optimistic, I do think humans will rebel against this.
I hope so.
Because I think there'll be something, you've got like the military industrial complex, and Joe Biden recently talked about the tech industrial complex. I think there'll be the reality industrial complex. And what I mean by that is people paying a premium to be removed from their technology and have human experiences. And I think that will spread because ultimately it's who we are and what we like. So I would hope that might happen.
The pendulum will swing.
I hope so. Well, I hope so. For our sake.
I do as well. During your travels and your workshops and the work that you've done, I just want to bring this back to men. Specifically.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in is about the male experience. I'm interested in why men are lonely. I'm interested in male friendship and what that looks like and how we define that. I'm interested in career struggles of men. I'm interested in relationships. I'm interested in men. Is the stuff that you're seeing more prevalent in men? Is it more? I imagine men to be suffering more than women. Would that be fair?
They both suffer.
No, I know they both suffer.
I think it's difficult to say. I think men suffer in a different way.
Okay.
I think there are different expectations on men than there are women. I mean, if you look at my whole lifetime, women have gone. I mean, back in the early 70s, women couldn't get a credit card without their husband's permission. I mean, it was, it's just ghastly to think about how inferior from a, sociological and cultural point of view women were, and all the films and culture of that moment sort of signified that. And women have come a long way. Men seem to have fallen behind. If you look at educational standards, women are doing better at schools and universities, etc. More women live on their own than men who tend to still live with their families. So something isn't working. There is no doubt about that. But I don't think the answer is to retreat into uber machismo. No. Because that's not going to help anybody. There's nothing wrong with, if you like UFC and you like extreme sports, that's cool, it's sport, it's fine. But the culture that goes with it, I guess the question I would have for you, because I'd be curious to know what you think, is if you could define a real good man, what characteristics would he have?
Patience.
Okay.
Kindness. Strength. When I say strength, I don't mean physical strength.
Like stoicism.
I mean, stoicism.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, the ability to critical thinking.
Yeah.
The ability to identify that there is a problem, what that problem is, how do we fix it, and how do we learn from it. I'd say that. And I'm thinking about the men in my life that have made a difference on me, and they all have those aspects of their personalities, I would say. None of the men that I've ever looked up to were physically strong. They weren't specimens in that sense.
Yeah.
But they were all very, very strong, I would say. And none of them kind of had this sort of, none of them adhered to this sort of rigid stereotype of what masculinity looks like.
Yeah.
They were all very capable of going to the ballet or writing a poem, or
They're all rounders, right?
they're all rounders.
Yeah.
That for me is what a real man looks like.
Exactly. And I think you ask most people that question, they'll come back with a similar answer. But the popcorn version, right? It's getting back to the junk food of TikTok and the junk food of junk food. And, you know, we get this kind of the sugar rush of the sort of cage fighting, Ferrari driving, cigar smoking, Uber gym guy who hates women. I mean, that's the thing that's most disturbing. It's not the physical prowess and the self-discipline and the cold plunges and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's, you know, fine. It's the hatred of women. It's not women's fault that men are falling behind. Yeah, it's women are just getting on with it. And if men are falling behind, that's man's responsibility to do something about it. And the thing is, if you look at it, in 2025, being physically well is good. So going down the gym is great and it's good for your mental well-being. We all know that. But it's an aspect of a much bigger life. And I think you see a lot of male influences sort of retreat into this uber maleness where being sensitive and thoughtful and kind is almost seen as a weakness. And again, it's not going to solve any problems. It's just going to create more conflict, more fear. And, you know, you see, you know, teenage boys in particular, you know, they're coming into contact with certain influences and then they're being misogynist and they don't really know what it means. They maybe don't know what the social implications are of that, but it's not good for their relationships with women. And they're growing up not to respect women. And you look at great men, and great men put other people first. And I suppose the big thing I want to underline is that you see a lot of these kind of influencers, and it's all about what they can have. It's all about the accumulation of wealth for them and glamour for them and girls for them, and that they're the stud and they drive the car and they go on exotic holidays. I don't think that is what a good man does. A good man helps to build a strong and civic society. A good man is a role model for other men. And that a lot of that comes through great communication. And I think it's very easy to communicate with people, if you're a misogynist, to just communicate with another misogynist because you don't get challenged. But actually, it's about opening up and communicating with all men, especially gay men who aren't like you, maybe, and women, because they're just humans. We need to communicate with all humans, and that will make us more rounded individuals. It'll make us happier in the long run. But if I mean, again, I'm not a social scientist, so there are lots of factors, I'm sure, about why men are falling behind. But the answer is not to retreat into a kind of a little conclave of machismo. It's more to improve your connections with other people, keep learning. And I always feel if you want to feel good, go and help somebody else. And so the influencers I like are the ones that are always looking to try and help other people. Like you said, you know, the guy we were talking about earlier who is helping people in his community and he's had a tough time. And he's saying, look, I've had a tough time and this is what I can help you and teach you. And he must have a great sense of well-being and self-worth from doing good work. I'm not sure when some of these more kind of toxic influencers, when they go to bed, they might be having lots of pleasure, but I'm not sure they're particularly content. That would be my take on it.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you're saying there. everything. It is a worry, especially I've seen some of the stuff. I've purposely gone down an Andrew Tate rabbit hole just,
of course, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Just to see, and it's just bizarre. I find the whole thing really, really odd. I really do. But I can understand why young men especially can become indoctrinated into that.
Absolutely.
Way
because
of
it's
thinking.
simple.
Because it's really, really simple. It's a weak man's idea of what a strong man looks like. It's a stupid man's idea of what an intelligent man looks like.
Absolutely.
And it's a failed man's idea of what a successful man's looks like. It's just ridiculous.
It's bravado, not confidence.
It's exactly. It's there's no substance behind it. And I think for me, it's about balance. Everything that you were saying then is absolutely on the money. Going to the gym, doing some learning, but it comes down to things like finding some emotional intelligence as well as reading and learning. Going to the gym, doing all these things, and fostering a community.
Exactly.
These things together, and I think if you balance all of those things with some self-reflection, that surely is the key to unlocking some sort of happiness.
Of course it is. And it's about not focusing within. It's all about me. It's like, sure, be healthy, eat well, go to the gym. No one's saying that's not a great idea. But once you've done those things that keep you fit and healthy and well, then your responsibility is go out and make other people's lives better. If you do that, you're going to be a lot happier. And the science shows this. You know, people who have very full lives spend a lot of time helping other people. And they don't need great clothes or, loads of money because they feel content. And surely life is not about striving for happiness. It's striving for contentment.
Peace.
Yeah.
I would argue.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to know that you have value. And the only way you really know you have value is not for the money in your bank account. I mean, look at Elon Musk. He's got $439 billion and he's trying really hard to be popular. Whereas you get a social worker who's going out every day and trying to make other people's lives better and loves their family, and they're actually happier and they've got nothing. So it is, and I think, you and I are saying this, and I'm sure most people listening would go, yeah, that makes sense. But it doesn't mean it's easy for people to be able to do the other thing because all this is easier. So it is about being deliberative and say, put the phone down. Who could I go and
inspire or help?
Yeah. And just, are you good at something that someone else isn't good at that will make their life better? And you don't have to do it for a reward. You just do it because it's a nice thing to do, and that's your reward.
I've had conversations on previous episodes of this show where I've spoken to people who have struggled hugely growing up and into their 20s and sometimes into their 30s to figure out where they fit into the world.
Yeah.
And often they've had very, very specific ideas of where they wanted to go. Yeah. I am going to be a rugby player, for example. I'm going to be an actor. And actually haven't found any joy at the end of the rainbow. And actually where they have found comfort and peace and joy is in service, is in helping people. The joy that I gain from doing this podcast and the conversations that I have is immeasurable, genuinely immeasurable, because I know, because I read the letters and I read the emails and I read the direct messages, I know that men are listening to this show. Long distance truck drivers are listening to it. People are listening to it on their way to work. People are listening to it, all over the world, and gaining something from it, gaining some perspective or some strength or some peace from it. That's giving me so much joy and so much happiness. And this was not something that I wanted to do as a career.
Right.
It was never something that I thought I would ever do.
Yeah.
But exactly what you're saying.
It gives you contentment.
It gives me
because
contentment.
You're making other people
service
happier. Yeah, and it's just imagine if everybody did that, just in whatever way it was. And we all, the internet is full of random acts of kindness. I mean, they reduce me to tears.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually when people sacrifice themselves for other people is the thing that makes me cry, because it's just so beautiful. And we are so capable of this. And you see the world. And I think, you know, I don't know specifically if the world is worse now than it was 50 years ago, but we see it. We see awful things happening around because everyone's got a smartphone. So we see atrocities and war and really awful things happening, and we can see how cruel we can be to one another. And it's completely naive to say, "Oh, just be nice, peace, man." But it's creating stronger cultures of kindness and communication and altruism that lead to societies then electing governments that mirror that. So I always think you create the culture, and again, in my very small way, the sustainable human is a way of creating people who want to connect and be kind and to be thoughtful and to learn and to improve their social intelligence. Ultimately, to create that small ripple in society, because that's how it starts. You're either going in a direction towards kindness and service, or you're going towards selfishness and
loneliness.
Exactly. And as long as I'm pushing in the right direction, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because another thing that I'm very conscious of these days is my consumption.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm consuming all the time.
You probably are.
Do you know what I mean?
If it's not content, it's material stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't feel like there's any tangible joy to be had a lot of the time from this. And sometimes I'm kind of bitterly aware. I can almost taste it that all I've done is consume on any given day, and I hate that feeling.
But you're being marketed to 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean, when I came out of the station, there was an enormous billboard for Huel, the drink. Yeah. And I wonder what cities would look like if they had no advertising. If football stadiums, if they had no advertising.
I know what it's like.
Do you? Go on.
You ever been to Glastonbury Festival?
I haven't, actually. Is there no advertising?
Glastonbury is sponsored by Greenpeace and WaterAid.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, wow.
There isn't a single sponsorship poster, billboard, electronic advertising board in sight on the whole of Glastonbury.
It settles the nerves, right?
I took a friend of mine to Glastonbury last year for the first time.
Right.
And it was a few days until he clocked it. And we were walking around, and he'd spent the first 24 hours in complete awe and wonder. Yeah. And then when he kind of started to decompress a little bit and go, okay, he said, this is the most peaceful, loving experience I've ever felt. Everybody that you come into contact with, and this isn't just hippy dippy, bullshit.
Yeah.
Everybody you come into contact with is full of joy. And I think part of that is no one's trying to sell you anything.
No. It's a shared experience.
It's a shared experience, but there's a purity to it. It hasn't been diluted and corroded by buy Coke and buy this and shop here and you need this and I know your life's shit, but guess what? If you have one of these,
it'll be better.
It'll be so much better. It was that, and so I know what it feels like, and I think there's a reason why people say that Glastonbury is so life changing, and you must go, Nick. You must go at some.
No, it's always appealed.
Point. You'll love it.
Okay.
You'll just love it. You will see the best of humanity. You really, really will.
Okay.
There's no aggression. There's no feeling of not being safe. People look after each other.
Yeah.
You just have random conversations with people, as society should be. It's a little slice of, I think, how the world should be. And I always get really depressed after Glastonbury.
Going back to real life.
Going back to real life.
No, I understand, but this is maybe one of the problems is society and countries measure their success by GDP. If you look at what Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are doing at the moment, the economy's been in the toilet for years, and they're saying it's all about growth. They want to build another runway. They want to cut red tape and I mean, it's almost a bit like Thatcherism. But that's the metric they're going to get judged by. And I think it was David Cameron, I think he tried an experiment of trying to work out what made people happy and, folding that into, the happiness ratio. Or
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it didn't really go anywhere. It was part of his, I think he called it the Big Society or something like that. But having stuff is clearly not making us happy. And the thing is, the Earth, it has finite resources, and we are mining so much stuff. I mean, I heard it was like 100 billion articles of clothing are sold every year. We don't need that much stuff, but yet fast fashion is incredibly bad for the environment, and you can buy it just by going click. And that's the thing. We don't have conscious buying. We have, I mean, you talked about critical thinking earlier as a real kind of like positive for a human being, and absolutely, but we don't employ critical thinking. That gets bypassed. And it's like, oh, that looks nice. And I don't have to do anything other than click. And then it turns up at your door. I mean, Amazon it's spookily efficient. And
by design.
Of course. But it's not good for us. And I think the point is we're all gently watching this sort of undercurrent of a soap opera of the Earth basically go to hell, as floods and wildfires, etc. But yet we're still consuming at the same time. But the problem is, and this is why I get irritated with governments in particular and these big firms, is they're saying, well, you need to recycle, you need to reduce your carbon, whatever, knowing that humans have so many other things going on with their lives. Actually, for all this to change, there need to be regulations, laws, and the tech companies, the manufacturing companies, the clothing companies, they all need to put the big changes in place. Because you ask 100 people if they want less dumping of chemical waste, 100 people will say yes, but for some reason it's not happening. That is not a good place for humans to inhabit emotionally. There needs to be congruence between what you want and the planet you want to grow up in. I mean, I think, someone who's a teenager now, what are they walking into? Right? Yeah. But again, I come back to this idea, change really happens if you change the culture, and you change the culture by connecting with one another and having those conversations. And that's how you do it. And we've got to be less interested in buying stuff and staring at our screens, and more interested in connecting with one another. I mean, it's not just a nice thing. It'll be incredibly productive for our future and further generations to come. So I'm hoping this is kind of a blip that we can kind of work our way out of, because we understand it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Things are just getting progressively worse. And
in certain metrics, yeah, absolutely.
In certain metrics, but if you look, I mean, let's take the mental health crisis for example, that exists in all developed countries. But let's just use the UK as an example. We have a mental health crisis in this country. We have a suicide rate through the roof with the young men every day, every hour, every minute.
And why do you think that's happening?
For a lot of the reasons that we've discussed. I think it's a lack of community.
Yeah.
I think critical thinking is almost the enemy of capitalism in a way.
Of course it is.
They don't want you to think. They just want you to press the button, and all of that pressing of the button and the immediacy of what it is that you want delivered just appearing. None of that's healthy for us. We were happier and healthier. Just use men as an example. We were happier and healthier when we were going out and foraging and hunting and building and creating.
For other people.
Because
you do it for your tribe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Back in the day. I mean, do you remember when, I think it was Rishi Sunak said he wanted everyone to do maths until they were 18? That was his big idea. And I was thinking, no, you missed an enormous opportunity there. Because actually, if you said, with the current online challenges we have with misinformation, with the amount of social media problems that we have, I want all children to study critical thinking in schools so we can prepare you. It's intellectual self-defense, right? And and did you know that in Finland, they do it? And Finland is the happiest country on earth. And the reason they do it is because the Finns border Russia, and the Russians have a long and storied history of misinformation, and they do it all over the world. They're very, very skilled at it. And the Finnish government were very, very concerned with smartphones, that kids were going to become, lured by Russian disinformation. So they started to teach kids. This was like 10, 15 years ago. And Finland is a cold, bleak place a lot of the time. Yeah, there's not a lot of sunlight, but they are number one in happiness. Now, I'm not saying critical thinking is the reason, but it's certainly a contributory factor. And wouldn't it be amazing if Keir Starmer really wants Britain to be a powerhouse in anything, introduce critical thinking literally from 4 years old. It's not telling people what to think. It's showing people how to think so they come up with good, logical kind of realizations when they are sifting through this tsunami of information. Wouldn't that be amazing if, because we know that so many sort of wrong turns in society, in politics, in our own choices are because we've misinterpreted something. And smart people make mistakes too. It's interesting. Critical thinking is not about being academically brilliant. People say, well, I'm not smart enough to think critically. That's not true. You get lots of people who are really academically brilliant who make terrible choices because they don't think critically. And it's a very, very specific set of skills. It's understanding biases, it's understanding fallacies, and it's understanding rhetoric. Like when a politician says something, if you understand what their game is, what the trick, and
what they want.
Yeah, and you can call them out on it, you go, okay, well, that's bullshit. But most people just don't have those skills to be able to pick that apart. And I think that would be, if I had 5 million quid, which is what I think it would take to get started, I would start an academy that created e-learning and face-to-face training for critical thinking nationwide. And I would partner with the government, go into every single school, because I think it would turn Britain into an incredible creative powerhouse. But unfortunately, we're too busy staring at our phones, and critical thinking is optional. And I think it's fundamental.
Well, it'd be an investment. That's what it would be. It would be the best investment in our future and in our young people's future.
Exactly. And critical thinking, again, it's not a panacea. But if you talk about how many people are lonely, afraid, angry. Critical thinking can help you to sort through those challenges on your own. We have a huge deficit in mental health resources and availabilities. But if you want people to be independent, teach them to think independently and be able to not be influenced really easily by some of these toxic influencers we're talking about, and go, that's clearly bullshit. That person is clearly just trying to get me to buy a course. Or, they want me to hate women. Well, I'm not going to hate women because that doesn't make any sense. But you've worked it out, because I think a lot of the reason why we're slipping down these kind of rabbit holes is there's nothing fighting back the other way. And I think how beautiful it would be. I mean, because there's no doubt that Gen Z are smarter than we were because they have more access to information. And I hope they do solve all the problems that my generation and the generation above me has created. But they still need help because they're getting overwhelmed, like we all are, from this sort of, this tsunami of just unremitting information. And how much of it is good and it's truth is a slippery word, but is rational and well thought through, and is what I call good quality information is debatable.
And they're also under huge amounts of pressure as well on a personal level. You and I were from the I'm the last generation that if you went and got a degree, for the most part, you were pretty much guaranteed a fairly decent job. Might not be the most amazing job, but you were pretty much, if you studied hard, you were pretty much guaranteed a job. That doesn't exist anymore. You can read for 3 years, you can read for 5 years and end up with a minimum wage job. So there's huge amounts of pressure. So trying to create a world or to start a movement where people are going out and fostering these connections and encouraging other people and having these debates and these forming these relationships. I feel like that becomes really difficult because people are isolated, not just because of the phone and because of the social media and because of the wealth of knowledge, but also on a societal level and from a career standpoint as well. You are isolated and you're looking around thinking, where's all these opportunities that my parents and grandparents were afforded that don't exist for me?
Well, jobs for life don't really exist.
No.
You've got to have this sort of mosaic career where you're jumping from one gig to another gig, which leads to massive insecurity.
Yeah.
And obviously we're being pushed kind of culturally to be rich. And again, it's unobtainable for the vast majority of people. So we're told kind of sort of subliminally, don't be satisfied until you have this. But actually, I would argue, no, be satisfied as long as the building blocks of a good life are in place. You're looking after your health, you're looking after your friends, you're learning, you're being in the moment, you're giving, those simple things, I think, are enough. Of course we like to fantasize, but social media is an entire industry of creating fantasies. And there's something really depressing about someone who thinks they're not enough. And then you say, well, look what a great life you've got. What are you talking about? You compare them to someone in Gaza or Syria. And, even people who are having a tough time here still have shelter. They are not under the threat of kind of military violence or dictatorship or et cetera, et cetera. So we're still quite lucky in this country, if you look at it globally. But it's, it is a challenge, but I think by having conversations about this kind of thing, and let's say you had a group of men, for example, and they're sitting around having a conversation and they're trying to work out, like, let's say there's 10 of them, and they're trying to work out each individual person, what can that person do to make other people's lives better? Just imagine that's the workshop. And by the end of the workshop, you'll have worked out a whole plan of how you can now it might be making your granny's life better, or it might be starting a group of people who want to learn a skill, or it might be learning your own skill, and maybe it's music or science or something like that. The idea is that when you're doing those things, you're not looking at a screen. And so again, I think this is possible as a cultural movement. And remember, culture is full of nodes, different nodes doing individual things. But if those nodes start to connect, and then there's more of them than there are of the others, suddenly that's what our culture becomes. It becomes people who want to help, because there's plenty of people out there in Britain doing amazing work right now, millions of them. But there are also millions not. So if you bring people in who want to be helpful, who want to be kind, who want to learn, who want to be thoughtful towards others, who want to boost women, who want to boost communities, who want to encourage children to be the best versions of themselves without kind of undue societal pressure, all the stuff that we could largely agree on, then you're looking at a widely different society. But I think we've just sort of lazily, through the phone and through, materialism and consumption and sort of this kind of weird techno-capitalism that we live in now, we've become quite just sort of passive.
That's the
and
word.
That's making us unhappy.
It is. It's apathy. It's apathy.
But it's learned apathy.
It's learned apathy. That's exactly what it is. It's someone else's problem. These are this is the situation I find myself in. This is the society I find myself in. This is the prospective job ladder that I find myself on. I have no control out of it.
And that's it. I think I totally understand that point of view, because it is difficult to feel you have any agency when society and the culture seems to be so profoundly overwhelming. I really, really understand that. And I feel it myself, running a business, the pressure, COVID almost wiped my business out, because we would go in and see people, and then everyone pulled up the drawbridge. We had to throw everything online and try and stay afloat, and it was a real challenge. But there is, I think, a very human and a very simple and a very rewarding way forward for our culture at large. And it's beyond GDP and economic growth. Those are, yes, the politicians have to put those building blocks in place so people have, they get the skills to do the job, and they provide job opportunities.
They're government metrics. They're not metrics that we define our
there
success
needs to be
on.
Cultural metrics.
Yeah, exactly. And you almost need to sort of redefine what people think success and happiness and connection look like.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? What do you think success looks like?
Success for me looks like getting up in the morning and looking forward to the day ahead.
Yeah.
That is success. For most people, I would argue, maybe not most people, but a lot of people get up in the morning and fucking hate their day ahead. They don't want to.
Exactly.
They don't want to go through that.
I was going to say, if you joked when you said, "Oh, I haven't really worked in 24 years or whatever," but no, but what you've done is done things you enjoy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, I said, "What do you think success is?" And then what does social media think success is? And are they compatible? And they're not. They're not aligned at all.
No.
Social media says it's the pool party in Dubai. It's the kind of the really expensive watch. It's like that's not going to make you happy. But and I know this is not the only conversation that's being had about this. This conversation is happening all the time. Yet it seems that technology and capitalism just has a grip on us that's incredibly difficult to change. But I hope that if one person listens to this conversation and goes, "Yeah, well, I think I could do something." And that's what, I always say it's very easy to kind of moan about the way the world is and sort of explain it. And it's all, everyone could go sort of woe is me. But there are so many things that people can do that are helpful, that just require your personality and your time, that can turn your life around. And you see it all the time on you read about it, you see it online of people who had one kind of life. You said it yourself, you were a hedonist, you were indoors a lot, you weren't happy, and then you just turned it around and now you're really happy. I mean, you're a role model. So if you get more people, not everyone has to start a podcast, but they could do something valuable. And I keep coming back to it. If you do something that helps another person, the reciprocal effect on your well-being is probably the strongest thing you can do to be successful. In the kind of the purest sense of the word, nothing to do with money. Success is I get up and I have a good day. Right?
What does that look like?
Yeah, what does it look like? And everyone's good day is different, obviously. But I am very optimistic because I think, there are amazing humans who are doing amazing things right now. There just needs to be more of them. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, there's a whole blob of humans sort of atrophied, sort of just on their phones, not really participating. And there's this sort of small rump of really vigorously kind of ambitious people for society, trying to get things moving and starting community groups and football teams and arts and all this kind of stuff. And they're trying to make it happen. And to some degree, they're peeling people off and changing their lives. But we need a kind of a cultural kind of uplift through participation, communication, upskilling, all those things that make your life a little bit better.
I could not agree more. Couldn't agree more. It's exactly what we need. It is. It's a funny time to be alive, isn't it? I think so. It's a very, very strange time to be alive. I wonder what it's like for our young people who this is all they've ever known, and they're hearing us have these conversations and looking out of the window and wondering what the future might hold, and it does worry me. It does worry me. But
one of the ways to stave off the worry, if you're like us, you're worried, is to do something. And if you have hundreds and thousands, then millions of people doing things, suddenly it's like, wow, look at all this amazing change.
Yeah. Let's redefine what happiness and success look like. I think.
Make it kind of more human.
Make it more human. Lean into the parts of us that make us human and the things that make us. Because you want to celebrate individuality, and you want that to be really important, but it can't come at the cost of community. It can't come at the cost of us as a whole.
Yeah,
that's what I really want people to understand.
Well, you said it yourself. It's you want to get the balance right. It's not about you can't have these things that we're complaining about. It's just we don't want that much of it. It's like we don't want a 2-gallon milkshake. We just like a milkshake. Yeah, and that's enough. But it's, they always say, if you want to be healthy, have a balanced diet. If you want to have a healthy society, you need a balanced society.
Yeah.
And society kind of isn't balanced towards those intrinsically human activities that make us happy. Especially going back to that thing, if you're going to spend 3 months every year looking at your phone, that's kind of where we got to start, right?
That's terrifying.
Isn't it?
That's terrifying. I look at my phone too much. There's no question.
Yeah, so do I.
I'm on my phone far too much.
But how much is that? What do you reckon? Do you know what your daily usage is?
No, I don't look.
You should. And just try and push it down.
Yeah, I'm aware I need to. I've made that connection in my brain. I just need to act on it.
But you see, it's interesting. You're very self-aware in the sense that, you've got this podcast, you're talking to people like me and other guests, and yet you find it difficult. I'm talking about it and I understand. I mean, but I've tried to rearrange my home screen because I understand. And also I do set alarms and say, it's been 20 minutes, that's enough. I do like, humans have an addiction to news because it's, with threats and opportunities and stuff. And so I'm a bit of a news junkie. I love all that kind of stuff. But it's like you can get software that will close it down for you. You can get software for your emails. You can
filter it.
Yeah, you can get privacy things which stop your emails going to people who'll sell you stuff. You can block out a lot of the junk just simply by setting your life up better. And if more people utilize just those kinds of tools, I think that would make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. What's next for the sustainable human then? What have we got on the cards?
Well, because it's a personal project and because it's not corporate, I want to kind of do it in a non-corporate way. And so I've set up a website, and what I'm really doing is people can have a look at the website, and I'm not trying to sell them. I have a masterclass that I'm going to be doing, but I'm actually not asking them to sign up for the masterclass, which sounds a bit counterintuitive. What I'm asking them to do is, if they're interested in some of the things that I talk about on my page, then come to a webinar and meet me and ask me questions. And if after that you want to come to a masterclass for a day and I'll give you those skills, then great. But you've been through a proper process where you've made a decision, not based on impulse, because we all like to sign up for stuff. I don't want that kind of person in my class. I want someone who's really thought about it and says, this is something for me, because it means that the class dynamic will be better because everyone wants to be there. And it means that I want people to be thoughtful about the decisions they want to make. So at the moment, all I'm asking people to do is go to tshmasterclass.com, have a look, come and meet me if you want to, and then take it from there. And I'm hoping that kind of authenticity of the buying process will be appealing for people. And it will also set an example of, this is how I do business. So I'm not, you get the classic American, you see the clock ticking down. If you buy within 5 minutes, you get X, and you have loads of people saying how it changed their life and all that kind of jazz. That's just depressing. I'm trying to do the opposite and say, have a think about it. And if you really want to do it, then let's talk. And then if you still want to do it, fine. Do you know what I mean? And if it could be more considered, hopefully it'll be more valuable in the long run.
I wish you every success with it, mate. I really do. I think it's brilliant. I think you're brilliant. I think it's brilliant. I think it's so vital right now. So vital that people like you are making these leaps and investing time in people, I think, as well. It's not, as you say, it's a business, but it's not just you're not looking at profit margins, you're looking at people and you're looking at society and you're wanting to make a difference. And I think that's admirable. You should be very proud.
Well, thank you. And I would say, and this is sort of for everybody's got something they're good at, right? Or something they can offer. And, I thought about sort of like, what can I do to sort of make communities better? And I'm thinking, well, my background is helping people to learn how to communicate. That's my thing. And that's what I'm doing. So everyone's got a thing. Some people might be really good at making food. Some people might be good at very practical. Some people might be good at inspiring people. Everyone's got their thing. And anyone listening to this, you'll have something that makes someone else's life better. What is that thing? And you don't have to monetize it. You just have to do it and see it bring you happiness, or certainly more contentment.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you.